Hello, and thank you to our third Educational Equity Advisory Committee meeting. It's a pleasure seeing you all, and I'm glad you were able to weather the weather and get here safely. And I trust we're all staying warm. We have quite a bit to do and quite a bit to cover in today's agenda. It looks somewhat sparse, but believe me, we're going to have a lot of discussion. But what I'd like to do first is go through some introductions. We have a few new faces, and we want to make sure that everyone's voice is heard. So, Michael, if you could start and just introduce yourself and your proximity to what you bring to the committee, and then we can go to Celeste and move on from there.
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Braxton. Let me just start by saying I am a parent and a grandparent of children in the district for the last 11 years or so. I am virtual because I don't live in Oregon anymore. I live in Texas currently. Well, I'm working on a project here, I should say. So but I'm still licensed, and so I actually interact. I contract with Tigard-Tualatin on the for the Equity Advisory Committee, racial trauma work. As a matter of fact, there's going to be a series coming out on mental health, anxiety, depression in students, and racial trauma. And I'm going to be working on that with Zinnia. We've been presenting that series for the last 3 years now. So I'm just glad to be a part of the panel tonight, and I look forward to learning from everyone here, as well as providing, my thoughts and input as we move forward.
Thank you, Michael, and welcome.
Thank you.
Hi there. I am Celeste Brandon. I have 2 kiddos that go to Byram Elementary. I previously helped on the YESH committee, and professionally, I'm the HR director at the Portland Art Museum, and I help with the equity team there too.
Thank you.
My name is Leanna Smith. I go to Tualatin High School. I'm a senior. I am president of our Asian Affinity there. Also co-founder of the Asian Affinity at both Tualatin Middle School and Hazelbrook. I am also the founder of our Work to Be Well Club, which is our mental health club at Tualatin High School. And just like on the side, I wanted to work with Zinnia on also neurodiversity within the equity of Tigard-Tualatin.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. It's my first meeting. My name is Octavia Horn, and I am the culturally responsive liaison for the Tigard-Tualatin School District. I support the high schools. I do a lot of other things too. I am a former student and a former parent of Tigard-Tualatin School District.
Hi, I'm Nina Lee, and I'm a 3rd grade teacher and building equity coordinator at Bridgeport Elementary. And this is my 2nd meeting here, and I was a part of the integrated planning meetings for the past few months. So that has been really insightful, and I seek to bring that work into today's meeting as well.
Hello, my name is Henry Castillo. I am a senior at Tigard High School, and I go by he, him. I am the president of No Place for Hate here at Tigard, and I'm also part of the Human Rights Committee for Leadership, and I'm also part of the Tigard student equity team at Tigard.
Good evening, everyone. I am Dr. Lisa McCall. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Tigard-Tualatin School District. I also support schools, specifically the elementary schools. And I am here because I believe the importance of work and that each and every one of our students deserves a high quality education.
And I am Brad Dorsey. I'm a parent in the TTSD of a 7-year-old in the 1st grade. And I have the distinction and honor of serving as the chair of this committee. And I would love to get to know each of you a bit better time. And I believe that we are all worthy just because. And that's a great definition for love. And I think equity is very closely tied to that. So I want to see more opportunities for everyone so that everyone can succeed equally and as often as they wish.
My name is Jacob DeGraw, co-chair of this committee. And I have a son who is an 8th grader at Hazelbrook Middle School, a Black son. And so he had experienced racism when he was a student at Bridgeport Elementary School, which is how I got involved and started volunteering within the school district. And I've been doing this ever since. So yeah, I'm here to help ensure that the school district follows through with their commitment to equity and ensuring equitable outcomes for all students.
Hi, excuse me. Hi, I'm Marta Veman. This is my first meeting. And I was lucky enough to be seated next to Brad at the elementary school meeting last week. And I am a former student at Tigard High School. I'm a mother of children that went to Tigard High School. And I worked for Tigard-Tualatin School District for 30 years and have been retired for a few years now and been doing a lot of work in racial education, different things about that. And so I wanted to see where, as a community member, I could maybe fit in somewhere to help with the equity. I've been so stoked to see our school board and how centered they are in equity. So.
My name is Nasir Lynn. I'm a senior at Tualatin High School. I serve on Tualatin's ASB as vice president. I'm also on the as a student representative for the school board, and I'm a secretary of this committee.
My name is Owen Albrecht, and I am a junior at Tigard High School. I'm also a student rep on the board, and I'm also an ASB.
Hi, I'm Zinnia Unn. I'm the Director of Equity and Inclusion and here to help.
Hi, I am Raya Goodwin, and I have a daughter at CFT Elementary, and I'm a school counselor with Portland Public Schools. And I'm here just because it's really important for equity to be considered in our schools, and just having to be part of being here today.
Okay, thank you all. Those are wonderful introductions. We have a powerhouse committee based on what you've all shared, and I can't wait to really dig in and get closer to what we would like to accomplish this year with this committee. At this point, we would typically review the notes from our previous meeting on November 28th. And we don't have, do we have printouts of our previous minutes? If we can project.
Not sure that we do, but.
Yeah, I don't think we do, but we do have the, is it in Google Sheets that we can share it with everybody? I know maybe not everybody has it on their phone right now or has a device right now, but.
Okay, we're going to be projecting that shortly.
We could also share it with the group as well so that they can review it with their laptops. You got it. You put them together. So did we want to give a couple of minutes to review?
Let's take 5 minutes to review the notes if we can.
Okay.
Okay, and has everyone had a chance to review? If not, that's absolutely okay. Yeah. And at this time, I'd just like to make a motion that we approve the previous minutes.
I'll second that motion.
Second. Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Nay. All right, thank you. We're going to look at our unfinished business at this time. We're going to talk about the equity audit summary And I sent out a form because we were looking at what are the academic outcomes, and there were 6 different groups that we could choose from. I sent out a form that we could select 3. How many of you, just by a show of hands, had an opportunity to see and complete the form? Okay, good. Good. Wonderful.
And just a reminder that Dr. McCall and I wouldn't be
Yeah.
able to do that.
Right. So the form didn't have emails associated with them. So what I'll do is tabulate the outcomes of the form. When I looked at it last, there were 4 completed documents and entries. So I'll take another look at it, and I'll look at what 3 were the most populated. I did notice that in some instances, some people selected all 6, which would be nice. But unfortunately, we don't have the time to get into all of them. And what we had talked about is really focusing on those 3, whatever they are, and then creating a subcommittee for each of those. And so if you all have any ideas about which subcommittee you would like to participate in, then we'll send out an email and you can join, and you can start getting meetings together and talking about what you'd like to accomplish. And what we'll also do is, once we have the top 3 identified, we'll ask those groups to come and present to the committee so that we can hear what they're doing based on the outcomes of that audit, and they can share what they've already accomplished or what they're looking at accomplishing by the end of this year. Okay. And like I said, I don't have a connection, but I will use my phone. So I'll try and get those totals tabulated before the end of this meeting. And then we can look at creating those subcommittees and moving forward. Okay. And next, on the agenda, we're going to talk about the ACB AR2 and SB 732. Those were ARs, one from the Secretary of State, and we're going to talk about how we can bring those 2 together. And Vice Chair Jacob is going to go ahead and lead that discussion.
Thank you, Brad. Yeah, so as we left last meeting, one of the asks was for people to review the current EASH committee AR and to examine it and compare it to the OAR from the state. And, what items do we want to carry over from the EASH committee that we're going to continue to do in this committee, into the EEAC committee. Zinnia helped us out by sending out a review and define form where, we're supposed to go through that form and help identify which areas are the important ones from the EASH committee that we want to keep, and then further get into some detail as far as how to define those things and start to adopt them. I don't know, Zinnia, if you want to provide a little bit more detail on how we go through that exercise.
Sure. I actually opened up the document that says review and define. And I shared that with everybody as a Google Docs so we all can be in it. And that would be our the copy for the committee to review. And so so the goal for that tool would be to take time to review the Bias Incident Hate Speech Committee AR, which tells a little bit about the Oversight Committee and the charge of the committee and so forth. And so from there, I'm hoping that we can chunk it up a little bit. So if we hold maybe 5 minutes to review that again and highlight what are the things from that committee that we want to keep as key components. And then I, will hold space for that, and I'll capture that for all of us as we have that discussion. And then from there, we'll also talk a little bit about the key components. So in the document, I see Owen is in there. What will happen is there's a box that says key components of bias, incident, and hate speech committee. So if we want to take some time to review that AR and then be ready to name what are some key components of that, and then take a look at the Equity Advisory Committee AR, which then we can highlight what are the components of that, and then hold some space to discuss what that is. And then from there, the next few prompts are what do we want to keep? What do we want to define as part of the committee's role? And then what might we want to expand given the homework that we did around our equity audit? And then we will adapt along the way, and then finally adopt what it is that is the charge for the committee. So we're gonna, if we can walk through it by chunking it that way, hopefully that'll give time for all of us to calibrate together.
And Dr. McCall was making a copy of the ARs just
Okay,
to
perfect.
distribute for anyone who doesn't have.
And I can also just forward that document with all the attachments as well for those that do have technology available to take a look.
Awesome, thank you, Zinnia. So we're going to take 5 minutes then, just to, I understand a lot of us probably did the homework, and that's great. But also to give you a chance to just, quickly review your notes and whatnot. And then afterwards, we can either try doing round robin or, sharing out that information that we sought that we want to keep. That's where we can start.
Okay, I just resent it, so it's on top of everyone's email. So if we can start with the ACB AR, that would be great. I might want to just direct folks to page 2 of the AR because that highlights a key function of the committee. Vice Chair, did you want me to keep time or?
Well, I guess we can, I believe by nodding of heads, it seemed like everybody did the notes. So I think we can probably go ahead and start with providing feedback.
Okay. So the first prompt for the review and define worksheet is to have an agreement on what are the key components of the bias, incident, and hate speech committee.
All right. Do we want to do round robin, starting with Michael? Like, do you have time to review, Michael, and provide some of your feedback?
Sure. So I'm a bit Let me just, yeah, I'll start. I must have, in terms of, I'm a bit confused because it's my first time sort of responding, but what I will say is based on the information provided in in reading the document and doing the homework, what sticks out to me initially from particularly the second page of ACB AR2 is number 4, the analysis of the prevalence of bias incidents and hate speech across the district and the effectiveness of the district's policies and procedures for eliminating such incidents.
Yep. Cool. So Zinni, you said you're going to be taking notes on what people. Okay. Awesome.
Yes, I'm in the document right now.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you. All right, Celeste, you want to share anything or?
Sorry, can I ask for clarification?
Mhm.
Because page 2, I would put all of those things if you ask
Yeah.
me. So do you want me to just pick one?
It sounds like that's a proposal to put all of it onto the draft.
I mean, if I'm honest, this has the heart of it and the other felt like legal. So when you asked me for the assignment, like day and night, so I'm just asking for, I really like the ish, right? And the other one, I'm like, oh, it's.
Yeah, and
So-
based on the conversation, how we finished it last meeting was we wanted to ensure that we were carrying over the true intent of the each committee into this committee. So I would agree that it sounds reasonable to include all 7 of those bullet items as something to keep.
Yeah, and I think if the committee also supports that, then we could just put that in there. But I don't know what the committee.
Yeah. Do we want to make a motion?
So.
Sure.
Just a point of clarification as well. I was looking at item number 7 on page 2. The review and analysis of the committee's processes and performance. That was fairly specific to that each committee. So if we kept the first 6, not to be literal, but if we kept the first 6.
That's a good point. I did have that kind of question too. Like I actually kind of forgot about that 7th bullet and I got to that and I was like, oh, I don't remember that one. And how would we do that? So
Just an adjustment to the motion.
yeah.
So motion to keep the.
Okay. I move that we keep 1 through 6 of the functions of bias incidents and hate speech oversight committee.
I just have a quick question. So for number 6, is that basically the same as the OAR of having our annual presentation to the school board? I'm just looking for clarification on what adding this would be different from what was stated in the OAR. Or the the OAR, the all students belong.
Right, that's a good point of clarification. And Dr. McCall, I don't know if you can help us out with this because policy ACB exists and it exists today and it's going to exist going in the future. And this AR was to help expand upon how that policy was to be implemented.
So your point, it's replicating the same, so wouldn't it be?
Okay, get her mic. Thank you.
So what it's saying is recommendation for greater system-wide alignment and consistency in implementation of the policy would be kind of redundant, wouldn't it? So it wouldn't, yeah.
It kind of would be at the same time looking forward to the OAR from the state. Like one of the asks is that this committee does review policy. We do take into consideration school district policy and how that impacts equity. And so is 6 not also saying that a part of this committee's responsibility is to review that ACB policy?
Wouldn't it be just to more than create, but just to review the implementation of policy ACD, the AR.
Correct. Making sure the making sure the policy ACD is implemented properly.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Owen?
Yeah, I think it does.
Okay.
So just for clarification, it's not creating a greater system-wide alignment, but reviewing the implementation of what's outlined in the policy.
Correct. Yeah.
So change the wording? That's
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah. I think the recommendation eventually will be to change the wording of that.
Okay, so I'm summarizing that at this point, we agree that up 1 to 5 with a review in wording for part number 6 on the ACBAR. So far, that's
So far, yes.
okay.
That sounds right.
I would also just remind everyone that one of the key components for this process was to define and expand. So if there are one of these components that we can expand so that it fits or aligns more closely with the work that the EEAC is doing, then we can certainly make that recommendation in addition to adapting. So we're not really we're not stuck in the definitions and the functions as they appear on the paper,
Yeah.
but we can expand those.
I guess I'm also not quite tracking what the conflict was for number 6 and the OAR for all students belong. And I don't know if that might be the right policy to look at, actually, because now it's every student belongs. So I wonder if we're not looking at the right one. I think the all student belongs was prior to ODE's AR. I think that was more of a historical perspective because after the ARs were developed, it changed from all students belong to every student belongs. And so I guess my question was, because the recommend on part 6, it says recommendation for creating greater system-wide alignment and consistency in implementation of policy ACB and this AR. And just a reminder that the committee last year did take a look at the data and offered 6 recommendations. And so that was the system for alignment. So the school district is using those 6 recommendations as kind of the roadmap for implementation currently. So I don't think we should get rid of that. Okay, I'm just trying to clarify what.
Right. I agree. And yeah, I have the old one where it still says all. So I need to get that data
Okay.
policy. Okay, so Martha had made the motion to to keep 1 through 6. And there was discussion regarding 6 with where I believe we essentially landed on still keeping it. So does anybody want to second that motion at this point? Okay, Owen seconds that motion. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody in nay? All right, motion passes for keeping all 1 through 6 of the current functions. All right, I guess I would, Senior, do you have something?
Yes, if that, I think unless there is anything else that the committee would like to review to bring forward from that AR, we can move on to the Equity Advisory Committee AR.
Yeah, I guess that was going to be kind of my second question is like the main chunk of the AR were those functions at the end. And I guess that was going to be a clarifying question for me is how much of like the preamble, like the purpose and the organization and membership, how much of that stuff should we also consider needs to be carried on? I guess that's a question for the committee, because I mean, when I was reading through it, again, wanting to keep the heart of the each committee going, I was viewing, like, for example, just the first paragraph of the purpose. I would think we would want to keep that. Like, the first paragraph of the purpose is summarizing what we want out of that committee. And so I was thinking that we would probably want to keep that. So with that, was there anything else in like the first part that people saw that they would want to keep from the each AR?
So just to clarify, the technical components of like the organization membership, is that what you're?
Yep, all of that. Because, for example, something that I think would need to be open for discussion is how the each AR does create and define 2-year terms for the committee, whereas the one from the state does not state any terms at all. So do we want to keep the term limits from, I guess they're not term limits, it's more like a minimum is how it's put out there. Do we want to carry that over?
And just a point of clarification too, we do have students a part of the committee that are seniors. So we want to be cognizant of that as well. And we can expand that and say, you know, if this would be the 1 year of service, then that position would be open for the committee or the board to bring others back to a quorum.
One small thing under organization membership in terms of office, in the second paragraph, it says include at least 2 of the following: teachers, parents, and administrators. I was thinking maybe to be more inclusive, changing parents to families, because it's a big push that we're doing as a district anyways, so.
I appreciate that. And as
Agreed.
within our equity work, we say family/caregivers.
It's a good call out. And I don't know how we're going to want to address it, but again, there are things that we can't carry over, such as the requirement to have 1 or 2 school board members, right? The new OAR does not allow board members. So there are things that are going to have to be removed, such as that one. I think one of the other items that could be carried over but revised would be the number of members, which we had established during the last meeting, correct? I believe it was a goal of 12 with a maximum of 16 members. I guess, does anybody else have any other comments or questions regarding stuff to keep from the Biases, Incidents, and Hate Speech Oversight Committee, AR, before I move over to looking at the one from the state? Okay, so Zinnia, how did we want to, since the one from the state, like, we have to keep all of that, right? So what would the next step be in terms of comparing to what we've identified so far and then now looking at the state's OAR?
I think it would be just the merging of the state's definition for 732 with the components that the committee had highlighted to keep and omit. would you like me to summarize what we've captured so far? Just so that we're all on the same page for that?
Sure, yeah, that summary's fine.
So the committee has highlighted that we would like to keep the purpose from the bias, the ACBAR, list the function of the Bias Incidents and Hate Speech Oversight Committee 1 through 6. Make some edits around verbiage to change parent to family / caregiver, and then remove board members' participation per Senate Bill 732 criteria, and then a change in number of members, goal of 12, maximum of 16. My other question is, since we're talking about also omitting or removing, there is a structure of the meetings for the Bias Incident and Hate Speech Committee, Oversight Committee, some very specific components of that. Do we need to address that at all?
That's a good call out. I mean, the first part, like, that the committee shall meet in minimum 4 times annually, which I think is fine. But yeah, when it gets to the level of detail, like the first meeting should do this. I think given the broadened scope of this committee, it seems like reasonable to remove those fine details.
Okay. Are we looking at this now?
Correct. And I guess for people that either have seen it for the first time or a reminder, you know, our scope of work really starts on the second page down at subsection 4, where it says the duties of an educational equity advisory committee shall include. So it starts at that 4 and then goes down below that.
And my apologies for the highlighted area or encapsulated areas.
It's not to say that any of the part before it isn't important, because it does talk about, you know, who should be on here and whatnot. But again, as far as talking about what our duties are, is what we're talking about right now. So I don't know if anybody else went to a literal interpretation like I did of doing a literal cross comparison and looking at each and being like, okay, well, this item fulfills 5 subsection D. I mean, that's kind of how I approached it. So if anybody else did that, I mean, feel free to share any of your observations. All right, well, I will go ahead and go first, and unless Cindy, you wanna start off with something?
Yeah, I think what would be helpful, because again, going back to this might be a communication tool that the committee might use to share with the public what the roles and charge and work that the committee does. And so even though, yes, we are, the committee is tasked to implement Senate Bill 732, but I think it's also important to succinctly share what the committee does. And I think to be able to name that, that's the goal, is to merge all those things so that that could be a part of the communication tool to our community. So were you thinking about having the committee take a look at like elevating some of the components of the policy?
Correct, like elevating some of the components of the each that we just went through and identifying, saying, hey, this body of work meets this requirement.
Perfect.
Yes.
Thank you.
Like, for example, I'll just put one out there right now, like a straight up, an easy one. each committee was required to submit an annual report to the board. Well, this new AR also essentially requires a report to the board at the end of the year. So I guess the question there is, how do we want to merge those two? Or do we want to merge those two? Do we want to have two separate reports? Or do we want to combine the each report in with, that's, yeah, people are shaking their head, that's kind of what I thought. So the goal there would be to have one single report, but we would combine, you know, the each requirements that we've already identified into the final report. So I guess one technical way to put it is that annual report, that each one would help fulfill section 5, subsection D.
Vice Chair, do we want to give some time for the committee to review and do that similar thing that you just modeled for us?
Sure. Yeah, let's take 5 minutes for people to review again those functions that we agreed to keep. And then again, looking at the new AR from SB 732 and, you know, trying to identify which one of these functions fulfills, you know, these new requirements.
And Vice Chair, I just wanted to share too, this is again, being new for myself as well, is when we read the language, may and shall, I asked our expert here to share, and may is a less, not forceful language, but demanding language, right? Or rather
Right.
than shall, right? So
Mhm.
that might be something that we take a look at as well around what is highly recommended versus, you know, what can be a little bit more flexible.
Correct. Like, for example, like the OAR from the state, you know, says the committee may submit a report. I think we were going into this with the assumption that we will. So I think that's the intent, but yes, it is important to note the difference between may and shall. Want to give it another minute and then come back? One more minute? All right, so are we ready to start sharing out? Hopefully people have had time to make some of those connections, and as comfortable as I am just talking and then spouting my own stuff, I'd like to hear from other people as well. So please share as far as the connections you made, what incidents or what aspects of the bias and incidents and hate speech oversight committee meet some of the new requirements.
I think, I mean, overheard them talking about last year's recommendations and the implementations of them. Will there be a review of how successful those implementations were, just so we don't recreate recommendations that have already been? So I just don't see that, and I think that should be in there somewhere where we review that.
Okay, and that's a good observation, good call out, and I agree with that.
Thank you. I have a question about, and that's what, I didn't know if I should come to this meeting or not, because it said in here that the committee should be selected by the school district superintendent. No. And Dr. Sue did not call me, so I'm wondering, did I miss the call? I don't know. But it says it in both you, this committees and in this, the school, yeah, the SB 732. So what is it? Do we do it or not?
That's a good question. It's one that I kind of also asked Zinnia and Dr. McCall when we met with her, because the way that it happened originally was there was a meeting to talk about changing the EASH committee to become this EEAC committee. When that happened, the EASH committee members that were present volunteered. They said yes. That was put in front of the board, and that's where the board approved. The board approved those committee members. I guess what hasn't been done to that point is all of the new members haven't yet been presented to the board and approved by the board and the superintendent, which Zinnia, my understanding is that will be done at a future board meeting. Is that what's going to happen?
Yes, I think the goal is to have all the members be finalized, and then we'll share that with Dr. Sue in the board updates, and then she'll present it to the board. We talked a little bit about this. She like we serve as the liaison to Dr. Sue to share in updates and insights, and then she shares that with the board. And so as a group, we were tasked to recruit and also spread the words of who would like to participate in the committee. And so that's who we have today.
Yeah, we did have some room to decide how many members would be on the committee. And then once we were able to identify who those individuals be, as Vice Chair and Director Unn said, then they could be presented to the board. So there was some leeway for the committee to expand a little bit on that.
Something that I was thinking about was having some more clear language that we can make policy recommendations to the board I think like on for subscript A, it kind of talks about how we talk about the impacts of policy decisions, but I didn't see anything. I was thinking about adding and policy recommendations after that, or we can do that in our yearly report. I wasn't quite sure which one was a better option, but those were two potential areas that I saw.
Yes, I'm trying to remember. I thought I observed something similar in the East Committee one where, yeah, we were supposed to advise on or review policy and its impact, right? So again, not just responding to policy decisions, but getting into more proactive.
I think number 5, potential recommendations to the policy committee to strengthen or improve district policies related to bias incidents.
Correct. Yes, exactly. Thank you. Yeah, that's a more, back to the previous discussion, it's a stronger, more affirmative statement of what we want to do.
And
So, oh, sorry. So Vice Chair, I've already, with some of the comments that have come out organically, I've already filled in like the define and expand components. So I think it's happening that naturally.
one thing I also noticed is both of them refer to specific training that the committee can engage in. And there are some ideas floating around that we can discuss with Director on whether it's a retreat, whether it's training during the committee meeting, but that would be really advantageous to us as it may not be in our individual skill sets to make the necessary recommendations regarding equity specifically. So that's something we can look at.
Yeah, so another example of a connection that I made between the EASH AR is on number 2, where it talks about, we're supposed to report on successes of EASH plans across schools. To me, that sounds very similar to section 4, subsection B, and then big B, where it mentions informing school district and school board and superintendent when a situation arises that positively impacts underrepresented students. So I think, again, what the EASH committee had previously been doing for that item would meet that aspect of the OER.
One thing I also noticed was the EASH requirements was to have someone from the elementary level, the middle school level, and the high school level. And I see that someone else noticed that. So whether or not that's something that we want to expand membership in this committee, or is it something that we would rather not keep, given the charge of the EEAC? Something to talk about.
I thought, Chair Dorf, that we did talk about that at one of our previous committees, and that I think we almost have representation from elementary and then middle and high.
Yeah, maybe we can do just a quick poll.
Yeah.
If you're representing elementary,
Kind of, yeah.
you raise your hand. And when you say represent, it could be like as a parent, as a
Yeah.
Caregiver, as staff, and so and a community member.
It's an excellent clarification. Thank you.
Any representation from the middle level?
And that's the one that I thought there'd be
Yeah.
slightly smaller. Yeah. Michael's hand.
Yes, and then representation from high school.
Yeah. Cool.
And then one of our staff members who couldn't be here is also from high school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have a few members who hit a few. I know that I saw Mr. Braxton had 2 levels. So does Rhea.
Yeah, and even though my kid's in middle school, I still have a pretty
Raya,
strong focus
sorry.
on grade school.
I don't remember where I saw it, but I thought I saw something in here about it being specific about there being a certain amount of administrators and teachers and stuff in here too.
Yeah, from the Ish AR. Yeah. Yeah, and so that's a good call out. And previously we didn't have an administrator, but we were able to get sorry, I still call her Gigi. Is that Gigi's an administrator? So we do have one administrator. One other thing that I noticed from the OIR is section 5, subsection A. To me, that seems just like a very broad statement that we may consider topics that we find critical to our ability to elevate educational equity in the district. So, I mean, that's a pretty broad statement that, you know, could basically encompass everything else in each committee that maybe doesn't fit anywhere, was a thought that I had. Right, so are there any other thoughts or additions as far as connections between the Ish AR and the, I just keep on saying the state OAR, but the SB 732 version? All right, so Zinnia, do you have any guidance or recommendations on next steps after we've made some of those connections?
Yes, I think the goal now is, so here are some things that were, I'll just summarize what we have so far. There was a call out for the Educational Equity Advisory Committee to prepare an annual report. And Vice Chair, you had leaned in on shall. And then training and building skill sets for committee. And then there was a call out for on 4B for the Senate Bill AR, which highlights informing the school district and the superintendent of the larger district climate and experiences of underserved communities. Is that correct? Okay. And then 5A highlighting the Educational Advisory Committee may consider topics. I didn't fully connect with what you had wanted to highlight there.
It just seemed like a very broad statement that could then encompass any of the other items from Ish.
Okay.
That we weren't able to say, oh, this falls under 4A subsection B type situation. Like if we can't make a direct connection, we could say it at least meets that one.
Got it. So I clarified that. And then there was some defining, having more clear language to share policy recommendations. As Owen had highlighted earlier, instead of just reporting on the impacts of the policy, also having a policy recommendation. Is that right? Okay. And then expand what Octavia had highlighted was review the recommendations from Ish and understand what's impactful and effective as like a starting point. Is that right? Okay. And so then that gets to like, is there anything else that you might want to adapt? And I think that was some part of the defining and expanding can also support that. And what might you want to adopt, which is getting us to some convergence around, as a committee, what is the charge, what is the focus that we would want to have, and then that can help with the reporting back to the board around the charge of the committee.
Okay. All right, and I will say honestly that that's something that I think have been some growing pains, at least for me with this committee, as we're going through this, we are figuring out our charge. And so, you know, I guess I would put the question out there to everybody on the committee here is all the work that we've identified so far from the previous EASH committee. I mean, I think it's fairly easy to say that should be part of our charge, that we're doing that work. As far as the EEAC work that's, you know, been in the statute, I think that's where we still need some work in terms of how do we broaden, you know, the EASH committee, how do we broaden our work to encompass these new requirements? And, you know, those are my thoughts, that we're still working on that aspect.
A point of clarification, Director Un, do you know if all of the EASH plans have been submitted?
Yes, so the EASH plans are all a part of the continuous improvement plans. And so currently the structure of those are, I think each quarter, a group of administrators gets to have a roundtable with the board to talk about their progress on their EASH plans. And it is a living document. So the goal is that, and it should be representative of what is happening in the moment, so that the community can see kind of the timeline of what gets implemented. So for instance, we've had 2 years under our belt now. And so the first year it was communicating what EASH was. And then the same thing happens a new year, because you have a new cohort of students and families. And so you see the cycle of like re-educating the community around what that is, and reminding the community on how to stop, support, and report when those things happen. So those are what we have. There's a lot of learnings that I think has come up in those processes. So yes, I don't know if there's anything else that you wanted to know about that.
The outcomes of those EASH plans, are those thoroughly documented, and would we be able to get access to those to review?
Yes. If we set that as part of the agenda, we actually have some we have the data from last year around the bullying and harassment data. And then that's where some of the recommendations came about. This year, thus far, we've created a new way of tracking those bias incidences and hate speech in its own category, because that was one of the things that the committee had asked for, which was because of the way that Synergy categorizes the incidences, it shows up as like other, and then it's like a big pool of that, as opposed to fully understanding, well, where does that is it like, when does it typically happen? Like when did the incident happen? Where did it happen? To whom? And at what frequency? And so that's what we're going to be able to roll out actually this Friday, now that we've been able to work through some of those challenges, because we had to untangle that data, because that data gets reported to the Office of Civil Rights. And so we had to make sure that when we changed the way we categorize and track that it wouldn't impact our ability to report to the Office of Civil Rights. Because anything that is categorized as harassment connected to identity, it needs to be reported that way.
One of the things I wanted to add, if the committee reviews data and based on Senate Bill 732, 5A, then it says an educational equity advisory committee may consider topics that educational equity advisor committee deems critical to its ability to represent and elevate educational equity impacts the students' experience in the district. So upon review, some topics or themes could come up where possibly the committee could make focus on.
Okay.
So I think that's what we need to have is, given the Senate Bill 732, what is it that you would want to expand as that language? Because even though it gives some parameters, like you said, it's not focused enough. It's very broad. So as a committee, I think you all have to define what it is that you want to keep pulse on and keep track on and keep accountability to.
And that's part and parcel of what I was considering when we were looking at the outcomes of the equity audit, so that we could look at what those top 3 things were and decide which of those we could subcommittee and have the biggest impact and provide reporting on how that's really having an effect over throughout the school district. So that was one of the thoughts, and I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on whether or not you think that would be a good idea for the committee to look at those 3 identifying areas and really drill down into the impacts that are coming from those.
Chair Dorsey, do you think it would be beneficial to maybe hear some committee members' thoughts? Because I think that might also help kind of bring in some of that expanded focus here, and then eventually get us to adopting the charge for the committee.
But yeah, that's an excellent segue. And I do have the breakouts for those 3 areas that everyone filled out the form about. I'll share those really quickly and then we can discuss. So the one with the most votes was racially and linguistically diverse workforce. Second was academic outcomes, and then engagement, attendance, discipline, and referral data. So those were the 3 areas.
Sorry, can you say the last 2 again?
Sure. Racially and linguistically diverse workforce. And the third was engagement, attendance, discipline, and referral data.
Sorry, I meant, then I got the, what about the first one?
It was academic outcomes.
Academic outcome. Okay, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. The highest percentage, I was just choosing the top 3. So I don't know if the order matters, but the highest percentage was a racially and linguistically diverse workforce. And then the other 2 are very, very close: academic outcomes and engagement, attendance, discipline, and referral data. The floor is open for discussion.
So while filling out the Atlas protocol for our homework, I also noted that obviously the engagement, discipline, and referral data show certain trends with our BIPOC students. And I'm curious if that does become a topic that we explore and make recommendations for. How would we get ongoing data throughout this school year so that we can reflect on whether our recommendations are working or just keeping a pulse on that area or those 3 areas?
I wonder if it would be good to just maybe go around so that we hear everybody's voice, to even if you haven't yet filled out or identified, given the 3 categories, is that something that you would also highlight and support? Or is there one that you really don't?
What were the other categories that were not in the top 3 that maybe we can look back on if maybe if our minds changed or anything like that?
Sure. So I'll just read all 6. Is that okay? Academic outcomes, enrollment in advanced courses and programs, program participation, which would be talent and gifted, English language development, and special education identification. Number 4 is well-rounded education participation. 5 is the engagement in attendance, discipline, and referral data. And then 6 is the linguistically diverse, racially and linguistically diverse workforce. So the ones not mentioned were the enrollment in advanced courses, the program participation in TAG, ELD, and special ed, and well-rounded education, which would be like athletics and arts.
And keep in mind, we can request that the individuals who are leading those areas come and speak to us on their efforts and what that looks like. Yeah.
And Chair, I would offer to that, given our earlier conversation around the term, a minimum of 2 years, I think given that insight and knowing that there has already been some work with the ISH committee, it's okay to take some time to kind of understand what do you want to focus on. So that, and maybe part of that is being able to ask people to come and share. Well, okay, kind of what Nina said. Well, if this is an area of focus, what has been done so far? What have you seen as an outcome that could help contribute to kind of the committee's learning? And that also hits your point around training and support for the committee, because that's how you also can build kind of your efficacy and like analyzing, understanding, and prioritizing.
One thing we may want to consider is what, as Vice Chair McGraw stated, that at the end of the year, we may bring a report, but if this is a 2-year term, given the expansion that we've been talking about, do we still want to focus on a first-year report, or would this be something that we want to look at for the entirety of this year and really hear from the individuals and the focus groups and the listening sessions that we need for that data to bring it together in a overriding report for next year? So that's something we can think about.
Right, with the understanding, I think of the group that, we are continuing on the ISH work. And so, because that's something else that we need to consider that we haven't done yet, right? Like Chair Dorsey said, and we see the ISH plans. That's something that we are behind on because we've been working on, getting up to speed with this new committee. So, I mean, to that point, I would say we definitely should be working and looking at those each plans, right? So that we can do our annual report out, because that is stuff that we've agreed needs to be done. So at the very least, that's work that we probably should be doing in, you know, the foreseeable future for our meetings.
And one thing that I would offer too is because the EASH recommendations are guiding our district's work, it might be good to ask for an update on like what has been done so far, and be able to share the components around what are the successes, what are the challenges, and what have been some really important and relevant feedback from families that have either experienced the impact or have experienced some of the supports around changing behaviors, which is part of the policy, is to address the behavior, but also support behavior change. And so there've actually been some really good learnings that we've had in that process that I think would be really good to share with the committee, because the other parts that we talked about too in the recommendations was the investments that needed to go to support that work.
Yeah, so we're hoping to hear from other committee members regarding the top 3 themes from the equity audit. You know, if we miss anything or stuff specifically that you'd like to look at.
Those were my top 3, but I really wanted to hear from students if we hit the mark with that. Professionally do HR work, and I think who you hire really changes the whole game, right? So that could impact a lot of those different areas. So for me, that's a match, but it's important too for the hate, speech, and bias not to lose track of that. So I feel like we're chasing 2 different things, and how do we mesh them together and not lose them? So I'm just trying to track it all. So thank you all. It's a lot.
I would say that too. I did do the Google form, and those are my top 3. And I had some of them I may pick some because it's obvious data that we can track. So that's kind of why I chose.
Yeah, I'm breathing it. I can't pull it up. But in looking at the ones that the equity committee is more responsible for, isn't that the engagement, attendance, and discipline? Whereas the workforce is the superintendent and the board. So how much can we influence that or tap in? What can we do? I just, yeah. So I was thinking of things that we would have more impact in, and I understand the workforce to me is one of the most important things, absolutely. But I don't know as a committee if we would have the influence as much, because we don't see the paperwork. We don't have the insight as to what the superintendent is asking them and things like that. I don't know what we can do. Does that make sense? I mean, it's like.
Yeah, I can offer some insights around, when we talk about diversity in workforce, it's not just the active recruiting, but also the active retention. And so our amazing associate director of HR and our director of HR had done some presentations recently, and they had shared, to get from recruitment to retention, in the middle is culture and climate. So the way in which staff feel either a sense of belonging, care, and support also helps highlight whether they stay. And one of the things that is connected actually to our ISH plans is that, ISH highlights education, engagement, accountability, solutions, and healing. And currently, the staff that supports a lot of our students in the healing component are culturally, racially, and linguistically diverse staff. And so being able to understand maybe the lived experiences of our current staff and whether they feel a sense of belonging within our district might be what we can do, which is like offering space for listening and insight. And then that can connect with some recommendations. Like what's the training for supporting administrators in creating culture and climate that is, I'm seeing some nods, and maybe other folks can share about that, but that's an example of how the Equity Advisory Committee can do that. And I say that just because it's a parallel to our equity work, which is we elevate and amplify staff voice as well, because we want to ensure that they feel seen, heard, and valued.
Just kind of like.
Thank you for that, Zinnia. Can everyone hear me clearly?
Yes, please.
Thank you. If I could just interject, I appreciate what everyone has shared tonight. And if I could just sort of piggyback off of what Zinnia was just saying, I don't know if it was part of the, correct me if I'm wrong, Zinnia, but part of the ISH, I was actually part of an initiative of a hiring committee for culturally responsive workers. So Tigard-Tualatin actually has done a really good job over the last several years of including community members, creating subcommittees that actually are involved in hiring individuals in a culturally diverse workforce. So they've done a great job actually in terms of working towards that initiative, number 6. Of course, there's a long way to go, right, in terms of the work that we have to do. But specifically, I just wanted to interject, specifically for me, what's important, all 6 are really important, as was what was stated earlier, but academic outcomes and number 3, particularly program participation, specifically as it relates to like the tag and special education. I have a son who's with special needs, for instance, in the district. So that's really, really important to me, like the disproportionate number of African American males that are referred to special education, for instance, like looking at that and kind of delving, into the reasons for that. Give me 1 second. Let me pull up my homework assignment. So what I stated for the Atlas Protocol worksheet was that there was a 30% decrease in African-American students identified for TAG over the last 2 years. And so the interpretation for that was that to actively address and support the equity of outcomes, which is the 4th line down on the interpretation. And the implications for that was unpacking the historical vestiges of racism that permeate our society and our school districts still today. And as all the documents that we've been reading are talking about abolishing this, this disproportionality, this discrimination, and the implications of understanding why specifically, particularly my concern, obviously everyone is important, but I'm specifically focusing on African-American boys being referred to special ed at a much higher rate. So those are areas of particular importance to me as it relates to the work that we're doing.
Thank you, Michael.
A question that I had looking at the data, and there was also the staff diversity is kind of separating it on, it said on the recommendations by like what staff are classified versus licensed administrators. And also something else I've noticed as a high school student is classifying even more by what level of classes are they teaching? Are they teaching special education, not special education classes, IB classes, or is it core classes? Kind of seeing the difference between what level of education each staff's teaching.
Yeah, that is a good observation. I don't want to end discussion, but I do want to call it as 8:10, and we are supposed to end at 8:15. We have a couple of more quick items to get through. But I just want to put out there, like, if anybody else wants to share, I think we could do like one or two more.
Going back to the staff demographics, I think that although I do see a rise in representation, I feel like it's really important to just be a lot more, well, let me try to phrase this, just be like a little bit, have more transparent data based on what exactly each, like the separation between like classified workers, admins, and educators. So I think that although I do see a rise in Hispanic people working in the district, I don't necessarily want that to just be represented in the classified. So just kind of like focusing on just growing it in all categories, not just one singular category.
Thank you, Henry. Awesome. Well, it doesn't mean this is the end of the discussion. We were anticipating that, this Atlas protocol would probably carry over into our next meeting anyway. Yeah, I think we have a couple more items to finish off, such as scheduling out the next two meetings, which I do have recommended dates here that should work, as well as I don't know if we want to address the discussion or the concept of one of the members needing to be on the budget committee, because I know that's a question that's been asked by a few people.
And then Vice Chair, I think just reminding the reason why it's really important for us to get the dates down is so that I know that one of the concerns that came up the last few sessions have been for like safety concerns. And so, the ask is if we get the dates down, then we can get, safety and security ready to go too. So that's another reason why that needs to be like an immediate ask. So if we can prioritize that, that would be great.
Yeah, so if we want to do that real quick, like I said, we pretty much decided Mondays, and so we looked at the calendar and looked for a Monday that wasn't a school board meeting, right? And we're trying to do once a month every 4 weeks. So the next one would be March 6th. So Monday, March 6th. So people could start looking at that date. And then after that would be April 3rd. We'd like to schedule out 2 more just to make sure we get them on the calendar. So I guess if anybody could say like for sure, like, no, neither of those will work for me, just feel free to speak up. Otherwise, if most everybody can make it work, I think we're going to try and keep those dates.
So it's March 6th and April
3rd.
3rd.
And same time. So start time at 6:30. And Patty, correct me, like I think we're going to try and have food at 6 for all these. So if you want to get here at 6, we'll have food. Okay.
One of the points of SB 732 talks about having one of the members of our committee on the school board budget committee. And I know we haven't satisfied that yet, but Dr. McCall, and you want to speak to that?
So in the it also says that in consultation with the superintendent and the board. And so I'd be happy as a representative to bring that to our superintendent around, is there space? Because it also outlines that a budget committee is not required to include a member until there is a vacancy on that committee. And so I'm happy to have a conversation with our superintendent. Want to add?
No, I think it might be that Director Moore had held a spot for a committee member already. So, but we can verify that tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll put that on our cabinet agenda.
Yes.
Okay, and just to tie it up nicely, now that we have our 2 dates, we can look at that security aspect of it.
Yes,
Okay.
so in cabinet, we have a portion now, a standing agenda for updates to cabinet and the superintendent from the committee. And then I think Owen had something to say.
I just have one more housekeeping recommendation on having a shared Google Drive where we can hold all of our documents, if that's something that works for all you guys.
Agreed. That sounds like a great idea.
It is. One of the other points from SB 732 was committee members having access to an email account from the board. And so if that's I don't know if that's a Gmail account. If so, it typically has a drive associated with it. And we can use that if it is a suite.
Can you clarify, is that everybody having an email or is this an email that everybody can access? I'm not fully sure.
Yeah, I will, here it is. Do you recall which one that is, Owen?
Yeah, I'm gonna say it's 3 subscript G. Each school district, in consultation with the Educational Equity Advisory Committee, is required to provide sufficient support to educational equity advisory committee members to participate in meetings, including but not limited to access to district managed emails, translation and interpretation services, and relevant public meeting and security trainings.
So the component was the district managed emails. The way it reads, it's fairly broad.
Right.
I don't know if it's individual or
I said it makes sense to have, for security reasons, our equity and emails attached for this committee instead of our regular emails.
Mhm. Okay, so we can bring
We'll
that.
also bring to
Mhm.
cabinet superintendent tomorrow.
Okay,
Would student emails fall under that?
yeah.
Okay.
So we wouldn't give students another email. You already have your current TTSD emails. But yes, I think we should. And now that we have a more finalized committee, then we can, we'll share that with our IT director and team to help build that out. There will be some specific, I think confidentiality, like agreements that needs to be signed just with any type of access that way. But we can bring that forward or we can coordinate that after we share with cabinet tomorrow.
I also wanted to bring up, we have an Atlas facilitation component that we're going to bring up to this meeting, and we can further look into the equity audit and identify who or what group we first want to hear from and learn about the work that they're doing. So that can be a holdover, and that can be unfinished business in our next meeting. So I will make that a motion. I move that we move the completion of our equity audit selection in terms of the 3 areas to our March 6th meeting.
I'll second that.
Can I also just, since there was an ask to focus on Ish, if the next meeting is in April, that's like halfway through the year, you haven't touched base on Ish yet. I wonder if that might be something that can be a focus, and then, because it might take time for us to coordinate to bring administrators, invite them in to share. If we want to do a roundtable situation where a few administrators can sit with committee members and talk about their Ish plan, but that would take some time to coordinate.
So you mentioned the next meeting is in April. You mean March 6th, right?
But then if the audit is on the 6th, is it the next one in April?
Yeah, after that March
Yeah.
6th.
Yeah, so you're
That's a good
mentioning
point.
doing the Ish next one in the March one or the April one?
I'm not recommending anything.
sorry.
I think I'm just hoping to know what we can do to help coordinate that. Because it will take some coordination because calendars are kind of full.
I don't know that the Atlas facilitation will take the entire meeting, so we can plan accordingly in that same meeting on who we want to hear from based on that outcome. Is that okay? All right. Okay. Anything else in our new business category? Or any comments? All right, and I also look forward to discussing in a future meeting, more than likely April potentially, what our training needs and requirements are going to be, and how we want that to look going forward. All right. Okay, it's 8:22. It's a bit beyond when we said we're going to end, but we can adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.